Welcome to the Daily Current Affairs by CivicCentre IAS, where we try to discuss the top 10 important topics for the UPSC CSE Prelims 2025 for the day from the Hindu, the Indian Express and the PIB. Displayed a list of topics which we have chosen for today's discussion. The first article is from the PIB, which talks about the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, in short called the PMMSY. See, this scheme was launched under the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. Furthermore, the implementation period for this scheme is 2021 to 2024-25. Furthermore, the total outlay given for the scheme is 20,050 crores. Now, what is the objective of this mission? See, the objective is to ensure holistic development of fisheries to enhance productivity, reduce post-harvest losses, and improve the socio-economic conditions of the fishers. Now, if we have to look at the key features of the scheme, firstly, what are the focus areas? See, the focus areas under the scheme are fisheries infrastructure development, climate resilient practices in coastal areas, doubling exports and reducing the losses, and lastly, increasing per capita fish consumption. Furthermore, if you have to look at the governance, it is based on the annual action plans submitted by the states or UTs. Also, the collaborative efforts among the governments, fishers, farmers, and stakeholders. If you have to look at the key achievements as of financial year 2023-24, see, a total approved proposals of 20,864.29 crore were sanctioned with a central prize share of 8,871.45 crore. Furthermore, the fish production increased from 141.64 lakh tons in 2019-20 to 174.45 lakh tons in 2022-23. Also, the employment was also created where 58 lakh direct and indirect employment opportunities were there. And the exports grew from 46,662.85 crore in financial year 1920 to 60,524.89 crore in 2023-24. Even the aquaculture productivity enhanced from 3 tons to 4.7 tons per hectare. Significantly, it resulted in the reduction of the post-harvest losses from 25% to 10 to 15%. And lastly, the per capita fish consumption increased from 5 to 6 kg to 12 to 13 kg. Now, there are also some special initiatives under it. The first one is the climate resilient coastal fishermen for villages, where the coverage is 100 villages near the coastline. The focus under this initiative is firstly infrastructure, where the fish drying platforms, fish markets, ice plants and cold storages are there. Secondly, sustainable livelihoods through seaweed farming, ornamental fish farming and aquaculture. But the selection criteria for this is the survey and the gap analysis. And these are the key development targets by financial year 2024-25. The second article talks about the PM E-Drive scheme. In this context, we let us look at the objectives, key components, and also search like what were the impact of the scheme, and lastly the eligible EV categories. See, this PM E-Drive scheme launched on October 1st of 2024 with a financial allocation of 10,900 crore rupees, aimed to boost electrical vehicle adoption in India by March 31st of 2026. Significantly, the scheme supports the development of EV infrastructure and promotes a domestic EV manufacturing ecosystem, aligning with India's Atmanirbhar Bharat vision and net zero emission goals for 2070. If you have to look at the objectives of PM E-Drive scheme, firstly, to encourage the mass adoption of EVs focusing on public transport. Secondly, to establish a comprehensive network of charging stations nationwide. Thirdly, to develop a phased manufacturing program for domestic EV production and supply chain enhancement. And lastly, to mitigate the transportation related emissions and improve air quality. Now, if you have to look at the key components under the scheme, the first component is subsidies for demand incentives, where it supports EV categories like the electric two-wheelers, electric T-wheelers, e-ambulances, e-trucks and e-buses. The second component is grants for capital assets, where the funds acquisition of electric buses, development of charging stations and upgrades for the testing facilities are done. Thirdly is the administration and awareness, where includes the information, education and communication activities and fees for the project management. Now, this scheme resulted in significant surge in the heavy vehicles, where the electric two-wheelers surged 5,71,411 units in 2024-25, whereas the three-wheelers increased to 1,164 units for e-rickshaws, e-carts, and 71,501 units for L5 category electric three-wheelers. Furthermore, these are the eligible EV categories under the scheme. The third article of the day is also from the PIB. It talks about the National Energy Conservation Day. In this context, let us look at the various aspects related to it. See, this National Energy Conservation Day was introduced in 1991 by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency under the Ministry of Power. So the objective is to highlight the importance of energy conservation, reduce unnecessary energy use, and promote efficient practices and technologies. Then why is this significant? See, it encourages the sustainable resource use for future generations. At the same time, it aims to reduce environmental degradation through collective action. Now, there is something called the National Energy Conservation Awards, which were instituted in the 1991 alongside the National Energy Conservation Day. So what is the purpose of these awards? Firstly, to recognize excellence in energy efficiency by industries, institutions and establishments. And secondly, to encourage competition, innovation and adoption of best practices in energy conservation. Know that the annual event is held on December 14th every year, where the prestigious awards are presented to impactful energy conservation projects. So what impact has it created? See, it inspires industries and organizations to adopt innovative, sustainable energy measures. Furthermore, national recognition encourages replication of the best practices in the industry. See, there are some of the key government initiatives for the energy conservation, which are the Perform, Achieve and Trade Scheme, Standard and Labeling Program, Go Electric Campaign, EV Yatra Portal and Mobile App, Unnat Yoti by Affordable LEDs for All, and lastly, Street Lighting National Program. If you have to look further about these schemes, you can check the video again. The fourth article of the day says that a 6-member delegation of the opposition MPs in the Rajya Sabha handed over a motion seeking the impeachment of the Allahabad High Court Judge Shekhar Kumar Yadav to Secretary General of the Upper House, accusing him of engaging in hate speech and inciting communal disharmony in violation of the Constitution. In this context, we'll talk about the impeachment of judges. See, a judge may be removed from office through a motion adopted by Parliament on the grounds of proven misbehavior and incapacity. So, while the Constitution does not use the word impeachment, it is colloquially used to refer to the proceedings under Article 124 for the removal of the Supreme Court judge and Article 218 for the removal of a High Court judge. Furthermore, under Article 124 Clause 4, a judge can be removed by Parliament through a laid down procedure on only two grounds. One is proven misbehavior and second one is incapacity. Furthermore, the Constitution provides that a judge can be removed only by an order of the President based on a motion passed by both the houses of the Parliament. So, the procedure for removal of judges is elaborated in the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. So, the Act sets out the following steps for the removal from the office. Firstly, what are the grounds for the removal? See, alongside the constitutional provisions, the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968 defines the grounds on which a judge can face impeachment, such as misuse of office, grave offences undermining a judge's integrity, or any contravention of the Constitution's provisions. Then, how is it initiated? See, the process begins with a signed motion by 100 members of the Lok Sabha or 50 members of the Rajya Sabha, which is submitted to the Speaker or Chairman respectively, as provided under the Judges Inquiry Act of 1868. Then the constitution of the inquiry committee is done, where if the motion is admitted, the Speaker or the Chairman will constitute a 3-member committee to investigate the complaint, which will comprise of a Supreme Court judge, Chief Justice of a High Court and a distinguished jurist. Furthermore, the committee will frame charges based on which the investigation will be conducted. So a copy of the charges will be forwarded to the judge who can present a written defense. Then this committee carries out an in-depth inquiry into the allegations, and post-investigation, a report is presented to the Speaker or Chairman outlining their findings. If you have to look at the parliamentary process related to it, see if the committee deems the judge guilty, both the houses of Parliament can then discuss the motion. But for the motion to pass, it needs a special majority, which means a majority of the total membership of the House and a majority of at least 2/3 of the members of that House present and voting. Then, on successful passage of both the Houses, the motion is presented to the President as per Article 124, Clause 4, leading to removal of the judge. The next article says that the World Health Organization published the first ever global status report on drowning prevention. So the report released at an event in Geneva reveals that 3 lakh people died by drowning in 2021 around the world, which is an estimated 30 every hour. In this context, we'll talk about drowning. See, as per the World Health Organization, drowning is defined as respiratory impairment resulting from submersion or immersion in liquid with outcomes classified as death, morbidity, or no morbidity. Now, what are the factors contributing to drowning? Firstly, geographic and climatic challenges like rising seas, floods, cyclones, and hurricanes. Secondly, socio-economic inequities, where the spiraling poverty, unsafe livelihoods, and displaced populations. Thirdly, lack of safety infrastructure like the unsafe water transport and absence of flotation devices. Now, what are different types of drowning incidents? See, firstly, unintentional drowning in natural water bodies. Secondly, drowning during floods and natural disasters. And lastly, drowning in urban settings due to poor infrastructure and safety measures. Now, what are the various global and national initiatives with respect to drowning? Firstly, with respect to UN and WHO's efforts, in 2014, WHO's report on drowning prevention was initiated, and in 2021, UN General Assembly resolution on drowning prevention was passed. Furthermore, if you look at the India's efforts, see in December 2023, release of strategic framework for drowning prevention was done. So, is drowning a significant concern? See, according to the National Crime Records Bureau, report for 2022, drowning is a significant public safety concern and accounted for 9.1% of all accidental deaths in India with 38,503 fatalities. If you have to look at the state-wise data, Madhya Pradesh reported the highest number of drowning deaths at 5,427, followed by Maharashtra, which is 4,728, and UP, which is 3,007. The next article says that in what could potentially impact Swiss investments in India and higher taxes on Indian companies operating in Switzerland, starting January 1st of 2025, Switzerland has suspended the most favored nation clause in the double taxation avoidance agreement that India and Switzerland entered originally in 1994 and amended in 2010, according to a statement released by the Swiss government dated 11 December. In this context, we'll talk about the relevant aspects. See, what is this most favored nation status or the MFN status? See, it is a treatment accorded to a trade partner to ensure non-discriminatory trade between two countries by other trade partners. Furthermore, under the WTO rules, a member country cannot discriminate between its trade partners. But if a special status is granted to a trade partner, it must be extended to all members of the WTO. So, historically speaking, the MFN principle originated in bilateral trade agreements in the 18th century. Furthermore, it became a cornerstone of the global trade policy under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, established in 1947, and later the World Trade Organization in 1995. So, how does this MFN work? Firstly, equal treatment means if a country reduces the tariffs or grants trade privileges to one trading partner, it must extend the same benefits to all WTO members. For instance, if a country A agrees to lower tariffs on steel imports from country B, it must lower the tariffs for all other WTO members exporting steel. Then looking at the scope of the explanation of this MFN status, see the goods are governed by Article 1 of the GATT, whereas the services are covered under the General Agreement on Trade in Services, which is GATS. Furthermore, it is addressed in the Agreement on the Trade-related aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, TRIPS. But there are few exceptions to the MFN too. Because firstly, the preferential trade agreements, which allows for the regional trade agreements. And secondly, generalized system of preferences, where it permits the developed countries to offer preferential treatment to developing nations. Lastly, waivers are also provided, where temporary exceptions are approved by the WTO members for specific situations. Now, if you have to look at the advantages of this MFN status, firstly, it promotes equality in the trade. Secondly, it encourages the global trade. Thirdly, it enhances predictability and stability. Then it simplifies the trade agreements. Then reduces the protectionism. Next, it supports the developing nations. And lastly, it boosts multilateralism. But there are disadvantages associated with it too. Firstly, it limits the ability to favor the strategic or bilateral trade relationships. Secondly, the countries with the advanced industries might benefit disproportionately, while the developing nations may struggle to compete on equal terms. And also it further leads to inefficiency in the addressing the local needs and exploitation of developing nations. The next article says that India's forex reserves dropped by 3.235 billion US dollars, ended the RBI said. So in the previous reporting week, the reserves had increased by 1.51 billion US dollars to 658.091 billion, ending a multi-week decline overall. In this context, we'll talk about the foreign exchange reserves. See, the foreign exchange reserves, also called the forex reserves, are the reserve assets held by a central bank in foreign currencies. So, these may include foreign currencies, bonds, treasury bills, and other government securities. So, these reserves are denominated and expressed in US dollar, which is international numerative for the purpose. Furthermore, RBI is the custodian of the foreign exchange reserves in India. Now, what are India's foreign exchange reserves comprise of? See, it comprises of foreign currency assets, which are maintained in currencies like the US dollar, euro, pound sterling, Australian dollar, and Japanese yen. And also, it has gold. Then it has special drawing rights, which is a reserve currency with IMF. Then, lastly, it has reserve transposition, which is the reserve capital with IMF. Significantly, the biggest contributor to India's forex reserves is foreign currency assets, followed by gold. Now, why is this significant? See, firstly, they are issued to back liabilities on their own issued currency for support the exchange rate and set monetary policy. Furthermore, to ensure that the RBI has backup funds if the national currency rapidly devalues or becomes altogether insolvent. Then, if the value of the rupee decreases due to an increase in the demand of the foreign currency, then RBI sells the dollar in the Indian market so that the depreciation of the Indian currency can be checked. Then, a country with a good stock of forex has a good image at the international level because the trading countries can be sure about their payments. Lastly, a good forex reserve helps in attracting foreign trade and earns good reputation with trading partners. The next article says that the Supreme Court brought relief to a former IPS officer as proceeding against her Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act in Haryana was quashed, with the court noting that special judge acted in a predetermined manner. In this context, we'll talk about the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. See, the NDPS Act of 1985 is a comprehensive law aimed at preventing and regulating activities related to narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances in India. Now, there are four main objectives of it. Firstly, to prevent, combat, and regulate operations involving narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. Secondly, to forfeit property derived from or used in illicit trafficking. Thirdly, to implement the provisions of international conventions on narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. And lastly, to enable modification of the list of psychotropic substances. Now, if you have to look at the definitions under it, see, the definition of narcotic drugs includes coca leaf, cannabis, opium, poppy straw, and manufactured drugs. Then, with respect to psychotropic substances, it includes any natural or synthetic substance or material, including salts or preparations, listed in the schedule of the Act. If you have to look at the applicability of the Act, see, it prohibits the individuals from manufacturing, producing, cultivating, processing, selling, purchasing, transporting, storing, or consuming narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances without due permission from appropriate authorities. Now, if you have to look at the punishments under the Act, firstly, the penalties vary depending on the quantity involved in the offence. Secondly, with respect to the commercial quantities, a minimum of 10 years of rigorous imprisonment, where the maximum can go up to 20. Then, with respect to repeated offences, the penalty increased by 1.5 times the prescribed punishment and the death penalty possible in certain cases. Then, with respect to the 1989 amendment, sentences under the Act, except for drug consumption, became non-commutable. The next article talks about the ice-free day in Arctic. Let's talk about it. See, the Arctic Ocean could witness its first ice-free day as early as 2030, according to a study by the Callan Hughes and Alexandra Jan, published in Nature Communications on December 3rd of 2023. So this possibility is driven by the continuous rise in the greenhouse gas emissions and accelerated Arctic warming. Now, if you have to look at the key findings of the report, firstly, let us look at the melting trends. See, the Arctic Sea has been declining at 12.6% per decade over the past 40 years, which is the fastest rate in at least 1500 years. Then the climate models project the first ice-free day may occur within the next 7 to 20 years, even if the emissions are reduced drastically. See, if you have to look at the accelerated scenarios, if specific conditions such as unusually warm seasons or persistent storms occur, An ice-free day could happen by September 2027. Furthermore, ice-free periods may last between 11 to 53 days, potentially leading to an ice-free Arctic month in the near future. So all this is going to be inevitable without action. So preventing this outcome would require dramatic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, which seems unlikely given the current emission trends. Furthermore, the greenhouse gas concentrations of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide reached record highs in 2023 as reported by the World Meteorological Organization. So what are the global implications of this Arctic ice loss? Firstly, we have the albedo effect. So the sea ice reflects sunlight back into the space, keeping solar polar temperatures low. Then loss of the ice means exposed dark ocean surfaces absorb more heat, further accelerating warming and triggering more extreme weather events. Then we can see the sea level rise also. So melting sea ice contributes indirectly to rising global sea levels. If the Greenland ice sheet melts entirely, sea levels could rise by 6 meters, devastating low-lying coastal communities worldwide. Furthermore, it is going to have the biodiversity impacts too, where the Arctic wildlife dependent on the sea ice, such as polar bears, walruses, Arctic foxes, snowy owls, and reindeer, face habitat loss and hunting challenges. And it also includes marine species are shifting northward to find colder waters, disrupting the ecosystems. Then, with respect to the ecosystem and human livelihoods, melting from a permafrost and loss of ice impact ecosystems and traditional lifestyles of Arctic communities. Also, the Arctic is a warm 4 times faster than the global average, endangering the infrastructure and livelihoods. The last article of the day talks about Firefly's Sparkle Galaxy. In this context, we'll talk about it. See, it is a distant galaxy located approximately 13 billion light years away was observed by NASA's James Webb Telescope. Furthermore, the galaxy provides a glimpse of what the Milky Way may have looked during the early stages, shortly after the Big Bang theory. Now, if you have to look at the key features of this Firefly Sparkle Galaxy, firstly, with respect to the mass and structure, see the mass is equivalent to 10 million stars of the size of the Sun, and it contains 10 densely packed star clusters embedded in different diffuse arc of stars. Furthermore, it spans approximately 1000 light years in its visible portion. Now, what stage of the formation is it there? So it is estimated to have formed 100 to 400 million years after the Big Bang. It represents an intact galaxy still in the process of assembling. Furthermore, if you have to compare it with the Firefly galaxy, see at this state Milky Way galaxy, see at this stage Firefly Sparkle is about 10,000 times less massive than the current Milky Way galaxy. So it offers insights into the Milky Way's nascent stages of growth and evolution, including star cluster formation and mergers. Now we have something called as the gravitational lensing. In this context, we'll see what it is. See, gravitational lensing occurs when the light from a distant object is bent and amplified gravitational field of a massive intervening object. So the phenomenon acts like a natural cosmic magnifying glass, enhancing the visibility of the faint, distant galaxies. Now, how does this apply to the Firefly Sparkle? See, a cluster of galaxies between the JWST and Firefly Sparkle amplified its light by 16 to 26 times. So, without gravitational lensing, Firefly Sparkle would have been too small and faint for even JWST to observe. With another video tomorrow. Thank you.